Let's go.
Hi, I'm Elena from Cross-Cultural Development, and this is Bending Culture, the podcast where we dive into the real-life challenges and also hidden opportunities of working across cultures. You'll hear stories, strategies, and even a few laughs along the way, all designed to help you to break cultural barriers and turn differences into your biggest advantages, and maybe even global superpower. Whether you are leading a diverse team, working in international environment, or simply curious about how culture shapes the way we connect, we collaborate, we communicate, this is your place to learn, grow, and thrive. So let's dive in and bend culture together. Today we are doing this with a new guest, and that is Krystal Wu. Krystal is my colleague. She is a founder of Way Beyond Coaching, company that specializes in cross-cultural communication and intercultural management. Krystal uses her own professional experience working for Chinese, American, Dutch, and British companies to help professionals and organizations to thrive in international environments. How to do that? By leveraging the intercultural competence and leadership skills. What I personally love is that how passionate she advocates for lifelong learning and resilience. And she believes that with all the challenges that we face, we still have it in us the power, the ability to become the best version of ourselves. Because she believes that every challenge, if you look at it from another angle, can become an opportunity. You know, I love quotes, and so I would love to share with you Krystal's favorite quote. I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday. Now, that is, in my eyes, super powerful. So I'm very, very happy that Krystal agrees to join me today. Welcome. Great to have you here on the show.
Hi, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited.
Perfect, because I'm excited as well. I want to dive in with the burning question I have for you personally. What is your personal biggest takeout from working for Chinese, American, Dutch, and British companies?
That's a good question. I would say is that learning is really lifelong process. When you just think, okay, I might be able to know one culture very good, very well, people still end up surprising you.
That's for sure.
Right?
Which company, which nationality, if we can say it, which culture surprised you the most?
Actually, my own culture, to be honest with you.
Yeah? How come?
Yes.
Do tell.
Yes, because people often think Chinese culture is one thing. You can summarize it in one sentence, one phrase, one word, but actually no. People tend to forget how massive China is and how many different cultures within China as a country.
I totally get you. When I was working in sales in my previous lives, I was doing the Eastern Europe part. And I know that my colleagues who were working with China, they were saying that is the most difficult market to work with. Is it because
Correct.
of all these differences, or what is your take on it?
I think the answer might be very nuanced and layered. First of all, of course, the diversity of culture within China oftentimes is a shocking fact for people who are non-Chinese wanting to do business with Chinese markets. And the second thing is language is indeed a barrier. Because, for example, the way how we express ourselves in English is very different than how we would introduce ourselves, express our opinions in Chinese.
Really? Can you please tell more about it? Because I'm very, very curious about it.
Yeah. For example, one very good example that come right on top of mind is that in English, we greet each other. Hey, how are you? What's up with you? How have you been doing, right? It's very normal. But in Chinese, we don't say that. We say, have you eaten?
Really?
Yes. Yes.
How
Yeah.
sweet.
It's surprising, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. But because if you ask an American, have you eaten, or a Dutch, have you eaten, they will be shocked. And why is it relevant? Do you know the history of this, or is it just something that you grow up with?
Well, I know certain parts of the history of why we ask each other like this, because how are you can be a very poking question, very personal. like how are you as state of mind, or how are you doing, what are you doing, right? But have you eaten is something so casual, so light, because oftentimes we meet each other in off-work setting or after meeting, then we'd say, oh, have you eaten, because it's lunchtime. And also food is a very, very important element in all East Asian cultures, but I would say in general, just Asia in general, like Southeast Asia, food is also very important.
Is food important to connect to each other? To break bread? Is it like building relationship?
I would say definitely, yes. We connect via sharing our plates of food. Hey, have you tried this Chinese dish? Have you tried that? What do you think of it? It's such an easy way to break the ice.
Yeah. So when Americans are coming with their very structured lunches, or the Dutch are coming with their cheese sandwiches, that's not the way to break the ice with Chinese people, right?
No, not really podcast. We're like, huh? Isn't that snack?
Yeah,
Serving the real lunch, warm
yeah,
lunch,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I also know that, at least that's what I heard. I don't know it. I haven't experienced it personally. I experienced it in my culture, Russian culture. When we come and visit our clients, it's very customary to also have drinks together. How is it in China? I understand that it's also drinking together is also a part of doing business, right?
You mean drinking in general or drinking alcohol?
Alcohol, yeah, alcohol, yeah.
Yes. I would say, especially Northern Chinese, they love to socialize via drinking, via sharing alcohol together. Me personally, I'm allergic to alcohol, so that's never my game.
No, not real
But
Chinese.
probably not, probably not, I guess. Not pure enough. But I would say I like to be part of it, to be part to share laughter over table, to be part of drinking cola with them, while they drink alcohol. Doesn't really matter. It's about creating this vibe that you can get personal together. You can get off the stress of work of your shoulder for an hour just to be real.
In European culture, in Northern European cultures, it's quite difficult, because that means that you can do something which people can laugh about, or you can embarrass yourself. So the people try, especially in the beginning of the relationship, not to do that. And I heard that Chinese people are like, they can separate it, if we today we got drunk together, what happens here stays here. We connect, and the next day we just being professional, and we don't talk about what happened the day before. Is
Yes,
this right?
that's true. That's such a good observation, by the way. And you know what? You just reminds me. For that, I have to say we are quite in common with British people because they also love drinking. Doesn't matter how drunk they are the night before. Next day at 8 sharp in the office, as if
Yeah.
nothing happened.
Yeah, for me, it was also a big challenge, because I'm also fake Russian in this way. When you go to a Russian client, to a Russian company you want to do business with, they can start at like 11 o'clock already with some cognac or some vodka. And by the end of the day, if you're not careful, you will be like, like really, really not professional. So it was a big challenge for me always.
Yeah, yeah.
But do you think that when people want to do business with China, and how important it is to understand that North China can be different from South China, how people can equip themselves for that? Because do you like go to ChatGPT and, okay, how can I be one of the guys in China or in this particular region? How do you think the companies can do that?
Well, that's really, again, a really good question. And I can understand for a lot of business out there who want to step into the China market, it is very tricky and very challenging in a way. Where can we start, right? Where can we start from this map? For example, I always proudly introduce myself as Southeast Chinese, which I
Okay.
realize a lot of my peers, they just say, I'm Chinese. I'm
Yeah.
from a place A or B. And I always say Southeast Chinese
Okay.
because, again, we can be very different than North Chinese. And I'm talking about people who live above Beijing.
Give some examples on what is the difference.
Happy to. For example, the city I was born with, and I spent more than a decade growing up very close to the coastline. And we are also very close to Taiwan. And we are very business oriented, which means we are a bit more tolerate towards other cultures who are very different, who on paper are opposed of us. And that
Hmm.
is a very different mindset than Northern Chinese,
Absolutely.
I would
So,
say.
so this part of China, and it's not a guarantee, but this part of China can be easier if you are starting business with China.
I would say in a certain extent, yes. Especially when you do foreign trading. For example, you want to sell certain things from the Netherlands to China. Might not be wrong, or might not be right, but just a quick example. You want to sell AC in China,
Yeah,
air conditioner.
yeah,
And that might be a easier market to begin with. But mind you, easy doesn't mean it's not competitive. On the very contrary, it can be very competitive because what you're thinking right now is already a lot of companies doing so.
yeah, yeah.
That's one
Exactly.
thing to
It's
keep in
easy.
mind.
Everybody is going there. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you think to hire Chinese people who know the culture, who know the language, what you say, the language is very, very important, is a must for the company if you want to go to this difficult market?
Well, there's a situation here. For example, if you have zero prior experience in counting Chinese people, Chinese business people, I mean, it's a good idea to have at least a consultant who are so familiar with the Chinese culture and preferably one of the locals. Why do I say so? It's easier to build this connection, this trust. Because within our culture, we kind of trust people more if they somehow look a bit more like us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't I know it doesn't sound really fair, right? Because you should be
It's
able to
human.
give everyone exactly. It's
Yeah.
human. We cannot deny that. And one thing is that we must recognize that. We cannot turn our face away. No, 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 that's not a reality. First of all, validate that reality is true. And second, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Right?
And do you think that it is easier to buy from China to export than to import to China? What if you look at this, the direction the goods are going?
Well, it's very complicated, but I would say within my experience, I would say it's easier to buy stuff from China, but it also depends on what kind of goods are you purchasing. Because China is well known for a mass production. Made in China is everywhere, right? If you go to New York, buy a bunch of souvenirs, you think it's American products. Surprise! On the
Yeah,
bottom of
exactly.
it, made in China.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty made in China.
Yeah, exactly. For example, I just returned from Bali and I also bought souvenirs and it was a wooden made product. And I thought, okay, it's Bali product. Perfect. I unwrapped the gifts and put it in my toilet, right? That's the Dutch tradition here, apparently. And I saw the tag behind it, made in China. I was like, damn.
Sorry, what is a Dutch tradition? To put something in the toilet?
No. So when we visit a new place, we often buy little something
Hmm.
from that place. And we gathered them and made a corner in the toilets. So we put all the souvenirs in the little toilets. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's just a tradition from my Dutch side of family or it's something a bit more Amersfoort because I live in Amersfoort.
Okay. So if
Yeah.
you go to the toilet in Amersfoort, you will find the whole world of souvenirs over there.
Collections.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. That is something I learned about Dutch culture today. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's very simplistic to look at Chinese economy as just mass production because I think that there are a lot of good things, high quality things that are coming out. And how can we find, if you are here in Europe or in America, how can you find a supplier who you can trust, who can rely on and build a relationship of the quality? What would you suggest? What would you advise?
I would say start your research ASAP. For example, if you're planning to enter the Chinese market in the next how many 3 years, you can already start your preparation now. Doing some research first, never blindly entering a new market. Today we are talking about Chinese market. Tomorrow we can be talking about Middle Eastern
Exactly.
markets or Arabic speaking markets, right? You will always do research about market that you have no knowledge with, no experience with. And I would say to exactly answer that question you just asked me about suppliers is that find 3 or 5 options and try to find direct contact. It's a good way to see how Chinese people do business, what kind of media they use the most. For example, especially in the Netherlands, we use different platforms. Like we talk to each other via video calls, via Teams or Zoom. WeChat use WhatsApp, which is very common in the Netherlands. But in China, we use WeChat. So it might be a good idea to download WeChat to get to know the functionality on WeChat, what's out there. And you'll be surprised to find a whole new world.
My goodness, that is very interesting, guys. I have never heard about WeChat, so I think that is a very very practical and useful tip you can just do after we finish this episode. Thank you very much. What I also wanted to ask you is that when we look at Chinese people, they are like traveling everywhere in the world. The economy is booming, so but in my eyes, not so many professionals who are working here in the Dutch companies. Am I correct or am I wrong on this issue?
Well, to be honest with you, I kind of have the same struggle because I've been living in the Netherlands for 7 years now. And of course, first of all, I live in a smaller city. I don't live in Amsterdam where you're surrounded by internationals from everywhere. Or in Rotterdam, there they have different communities for Chinese, for Arabic speakers, for example. So for me, I also had this challenge. Why do I never encounter people why am I the only Chinese slash Asian in my company, in my team?
Yeah. And what was your
Yeah.
answer? What was your answer that you made for your own question?
I think it's also up to my choice because I choose to work in an international environment. For example, earlier last year, I actually had an interview with a Chinese company. It's well known. And later, I decided to not moving forward with their interview process because I realized that's not a culture I would thrive.
Was it a culture just from one company, or do you think it has something to do with the fact that it's Chinese culture that they are trying to take their habits and views and mindsets to the rest of the world?
That's very critical. And I would say always one individual is a reflection of the whole. That's all I can say. And it's your choice. For example, I choose to work to thrive in an international environment because that aligns more with my personal value. And mind you, my personal value can be very different than the dominant Chinese values.
That's true. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she is French. And she's living in Holland, and she said, the Dutch working culture is so much nicer for me. And it can be very strange for my friends in France, but I'm thriving here because I like how direct Dutch people are thriving. Do you think it's something that is incorporated in the Dutch culture to thrive in the organization? Because that is, of
Huh?
course, your passion. So I'm
Yeah.
curious how you see it in this part of growth and development and resilience. How do you see that from culture to culture?
Well, how many Dutch listeners do you have? Because I might end up saying something they don't like or they don't appreciate.
That is their problem. You know,
Yes,
if you cannot if you cannot hear somebody's opinion, you're not that open minded as you pretend to be, right? So I
right. Correct.
hope you can say your opinion, because we're not establishing the truth here. We're just talking, and I'm curious about your opinion.
Yes. I'm just sharing my observation, just as you do, right? I would say when I define the word thriving, I'm talking about being ambitious without being dragged down. Like, how dare you to stand out? How dare you to be different? In that regards, I would say most, most of my Dutch colleagues I've observed so far, they are surprisingly not ambitious as I thought. For example, there's a famous Dutch saying, I think Elena, you know it better than I do. It's like home. It's every Dutch person's little dream of having a dog, a pet at home, having a partner, a long-term partner, by the
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
and a little tree in the back. It's beautiful. Okay, it's beautiful. But is it okay for me wanting to have more?
absolutely.
Right?
But do you think that Dutch people is about saying, okay, I'm not ambitious, so I will try and do my best to stop you from ambitious? Do you think that that is what you counted?
That might not be the case, but I do realize this kind of okay, we are going something very negative here, right? But it's
Mm.
part of the life. It's not always rainbow and sunshine. I do realize certain Dutch and also German, I do realize they tend to complain a lot about people who choose to work a lot, to work over time, choose to have a second hobby, a second income. This
Yeah,
kind of jealousy is something I don't quite understand because meanwhile they're complaining about heavy taxation. They're complaining about late trains. They're complaining about not having enough. They're complaining about everything costs so much. But my mind goes like, okay, so what can we do about it?
yeah,
What can you change?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Let's not just complain. Let's also take some actions. What can
yeah.
we do?
So do you think that Americans, because you have experience with them, they are less complaining and more proactive in this way? Because we talk about the house and a tree and a dog, and they talk about American dreams, right? So it's like,
Yeah, for that regards, I would say I love them for that. I actually love that, really. I love that. Although there's always the counterfeit that everything has to be more glamorous. Your house has to be bigger. Your dog has to be prettier. Right?
exactly. That's
More
term.
and more. It's never enough. But of course, that's the extreme side of it. There's never one thing that is purely good or bad. We need to be very aware of that. But it's about finding balance, finding your sweet spot. What suits you better?
Yeah. If you could choose which country or which company to work for, what would you choose personally?
That's a difficult question, really difficult. Because there's something I really love, and meanwhile, there's something I just couldn't really bear with.
Yeah. So when we talk about people changing, I would say that what is the stimulus to change? Do you want to become better or do you want to get away from the pain? Right. And we
Yeah.
see that people more often go away from the pain because they have to. That is also, I think, very Dutch thing to say. Okay, if we talk about numbers and it's from 1 to 10, score from 1 to 10. I have a 6 now. 10 is impossible for me. But should I try and make so many? I think that that is what you're also saying about there being ambitious. I'm okay with 6, but yeah, should I take all this effort to make a 9? What would be for you a 9? Maybe it's not a company or a country, but maybe the culture to work in.
Nine culture would be the mix of American and Chinese. Why do I say so? Because some of the Chinese working mentalities is awesome, really. It's
Which
so
one?
nice to work with them. Sorry?
Can you give an example? Because people don't know what you mean, I think.
Okay, let me put it out very clearly. When you work with a bunch of Chinese, they're very goal oriented. Okay, tomorrow or next year, we are going to launch this marketing plan. What can we do? Everyone will dive in. You really enjoy that passion. And that very much aligns with a lot of American, especially startup cultures. People like to create something together. They love to get their hands dirty, to start somewhere, to build a base.
Do you think that has to do with? I'm thinking about it. Huh? You make me think. So that's a good podcast. Do you think it has to do something with the fact that Chinese leadership style is very hierarchical? So when a leader says we're gonna do this, everybody like they don't even hesitate. It's not if they're interested or not, they believe it or not, they just go for it. Because like French, for example, what I'm always telling it to my students, to the people I work with, to the Dutch people, you can say how you get there and they go. They understand the steps and they go. For the French people, you need to explain why they need to take these steps. Otherwise,
Huh?
they're not gonna move. So is it possible that what you say about Chinese people is drive that what we dive in, it's just the way we are brought up that we don't ask questions, we just go for it? Or is it more conscious now?
If you ask me that same question, probably 5 or 10 years ago, I would have a different answer. But now I think China has experienced so much dramatic change, especially post COVID. We've all seen there on news. All right. Like I'm talking about not just business environments, politics and economy, anything you can name it. And for that, I would say people's mindset is also slowly changing.
What
And
kind of
in the
mindset is it now?
I think people are now realizing that when it comes to leadership, it's not about one person deciding everything for the rest. It's also about how you influence others, how you send this positive energy to create a positive impact so that people are driven by themselves.
Yeah.
It's not no longer the old times like the empire sitting high up and telling people, literally bossing people around. You need to do this. You need to do that. It's no longer like that anymore, I
So
believe.
if you still have this stereotype idea of the Chinese culture, of the big leader and the little people moving around it, so that is stereotype that is not that is changing.
Already changed, I believe, a long time ago. That's why oftentimes I have this paradox. I'm experiencing a paradox, actually, is that people's reference about China in general, or Chinese working culture, or Chinese business people, is from way back. It's very much outdated.
Do you think we can really like grow out of our cultural biases in a couple of years' time?
That might be tricky, I would say. Might be challenging, but not impossible. So for that, I think different people have different opinions and ideas. For me, I would say the best way is, or one of the best way you could try is by starting to learn Chinese history a little bit to understand where are these people coming from, why they are who they are today, why they act in this way, why they think in this way. Because we have a prolonged history, we have layers of changes. And most people don't know in this part of the world is that in the past, we apparently had a very different governments, right? If you know what I'm talking about, a very different party who was ruling the China at the time. But today's China is very different, but we share the same roots. We have a lot of things in common, and it's a really good way to understand where are we coming from, to understand Chinese logics, why we tend to talk a lot about the details, never answering a question directly. Why we seem to be honest, eat our words, change the contract later on.
So it's all about willingness to understand and not to say right away, okay, that is not how we do it, so it's wrong. It's about willingness to understand. Are there other
Exactly.
stereotypes that you say they were about China, but they are not anymore, guys? Be careful, work on your biases. Are there any other stereotypes you can warn us about?
I would say it might overlap with what I just mentioned in the past 10 minutes or so. I would say don't ever blind China as a country, a whole concept, Chinese people, Chinese culture, Chinese government altogether.
Yeah,
We are not that anymore.
yeah, yeah.
We have very much our own opinions. We might not be able to express that right away with you because we need some time to be able to know I trust you. I feel safe to share this piece of information with you, but give me some time. Learn to be patient with us, to let us talk, to let us finish our story. Yeah.
That's a beautiful call to action, guys. I love this one very much. We are getting at the end of the year. 2026 is coming. What are your personal ambitions, professional ambitions that you want to have for the 2026 with your company, personally,
Ooh.
maybe professionally?
Yeah. I really love that question. I really love that question. And I have to have a quick think over. I would say professional wise, I really want to take my business to the next step. But I don't just want to limit myself as when people see me, see my face, hear me talking. You're Chinese. So I only associate you with everything Chinese related. I want to break that ceiling. I want to build my own framework that people can trust me to know, okay, if you find way beyond coaching, I'm gonna let you know something that is globally applicable. It's about competence. It does not just apply to Chinese or Dutch, for example. It's something we can all learn from. Yeah,
Exactly. That is looking at the cultural difference and understanding them, but going beyond the cultural differences because there are lessons and skills and competences that we need in every country. It's just working globally. Yeah.
exactly. That's why my company is called Way Beyond Coaching. So I
Exactly.
want to get people go way beyond of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's nice. How can we help you? How can the people who are listening, who are curious about you, how can they reach you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the stage, couple minutes. I want to say for all listeners, if you are interested in knowing more, like what do I exactly do at Way Beyond and how I can help your company. For example, if you want to enter Chinese market in the near future, or if you have a specific challenge about managing international employees, or if you have a change of teams, come find me via LinkedIn or come find Elena to have the more contact information details. And we are happy to talk.
I will put Krystal's LinkedIn profile in the comments under the podcast so that if you look for it, you can find her easily. Thank you very much, Krystal, for sharing this insight and the practical tips and also your passion. You know, it is so it gives me such a warm feeling, you know, to talk about culture in such a intimate way like we had today because sometimes we laugh and sometimes it's really gets to your heart. And that was for me today's conversation. And I'm sure, guys, that you also, there was something that touched you and maybe gave you some new insights of, gave you some new ideas to think about not only Chinese culture, but also about the culture in general. If you feel inspired by what you heard today and you want to go further in navigating our multicultural world, join me in 3 weeks for another episode of Bending Culture with another inspiring guest. And we will explore more ways to grow, to lead, to thrive in global environment. And yeah, the people who listening to me all the time, they know that every episode I finish with my personal ask. And the podcast is growing and it's only the second season. So please subscribe. It's totally free and it helps me to invite interesting guests and to cover more topics. Leave a review because I love to get feedback from you because I believe that feedback can only help us to grow. I'm not afraid of it. I'm looking forward to it. And maybe you know somebody who is going to profit from listening to the podcast. Share it with a fellow global game changer. Until next time, this is Elena from Cross Cultural Development. Let's keep bending culture together to shape thriving, inclusive business world. Thank you, Krystal. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye bye.